Hello, Narcissus. How are you? Can you hear me okay? How are you?
Hello. I'm very well. How about you?
Yeah. We finally have a connection quality here. That's great. Fantastic. So,
Yeah.
how was the
Yeah.
weather in Armenia?
Well, it's getting colder. The w winters are generally not the best season in Armenia, so
Okay.
yeah.
So the weather's changing cold. So are you staying busy, or how are things, you know, with everything that the political situation in Armenia? Everything is relatively stable, or it's up and down depending on the month?
Well, I think that well, internally it's stable. I mean, it's but of course there are some tensions with Azerbaijan. So mostly people are concerned, frankly speaking, about this conflict, between Armenia and Azerbaijan.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I think it's stable. Of course, the situation in Ukraine also affects, it affects some positively, some negatively, but we in particular we have um, a surge, I would say, in clients because many people from Russia moved to Armenia with their businesses.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
see. I see. Well, Narcissus, my goal is semi-business, semi kind of, if you will,
Mm.
religious, because
Okay.
Armenia is essentially sandwiched between two Islamic republics. On the east is
Mm.
Azerbaijan, on the west is Turkey. To the south of you is, of course, Iran.
Mhm.
So we need to have some balance there. So we would like to bring as much investment, as much positive economic activity to Armenia as we can. And so this is why I wanted to just take a few minutes of our time to introduce what we're trying to do, see if we can make it happen, and get your honest opinion on how difficult it would be, because I'm sure we would need a lot of connections, useful connections in
Mhm.
Armenia to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. So by education, I'm an economist. I got a degree in economics. All my life, I've been in the financial field, basically running foundations, hedge funds, but they're mostly private foundations. And with Armenia, we have some very interesting technology that we'd like to bring to Armenia, and to kind of perhaps even maybe build a factory, some IT related technology, um,
Mhm.
artificial intelligence units for smart drones, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And also um, on more humanitarian side, I spoke with Dr. Garabed Kazarian from the AUA, University
Mhm.
of Armenia in Yerevan, and he's very concerned about the water quality at Lake Savan. That it's been
Mhm.
consistently going down. The water levels are down, and also the fact that the water quality has gone down. So anyway,
Right.
our secondary goal, our secondary, if you will, project is to build a water treatment plant at Lake Savan. So just basically investing whatever it takes, however much it takes, to bring the latest technology to Armenia from America, with our engineers and with your local, competent parties on the ground. We're going to just build the latest
Mhm.
cutting edge water treatment plant. At least that's what we would like to do: build a water treatment plant at Lake Savan, so that for many generations, um, people, should not be concerned about the water quality, especially since it's a high elevation, very pure source of potable water, drinking water. So that's on the more environmental side. So what is your honest opinion? You don't have to spare my feelings. You just tell me as it is. Obviously, we'll need a lot of very special connections besides your help, besides you helping us, form the all the legal structures, doing all the documentation. I understand that. I'm sure you'll do a fantastic job with that. But what type of connections would we need to develop as we progress? Let's say if I move to Yerevan in the spring of 2023, so I will rent an apartment to personally oversee the building of the water treatment plant at Lake Sivan. So I'll be physically in Yerevan. What type of connections do you think would we need to have to be able to do other things like the factory, to build the smart drones, to help the balance out the situation in Armenia, so that you'll have the latest technology that was supposed to introduce at the U.S. Mexico border. That project was temporarily shelved or canceled or postponed because of some our own political things here that are happening that I'll tell you in a minute. But in the interest of time, there's this phenomenal project. Smart drone was supposed to guard the border between U.S. and Mexico. It was
Right.
with a essentially, as soon as Biden took office, he immediately canceled the project along with 40 other projects like the oil wells in Alaska and in Texas and a few other areas,
Mhm.
along the U.S.-Canada border. So anyway, Biden, with a stroke of a pen, he canceled vital projects worth hundreds of billions of dollars because of his political um, stance, where he stands on certain issues. Anyway, long story short, we have some technology that got freed up that we could bring to Armenia because
Mhm.
it was canceled, or not canceled but suspended in America. But it's cutting
Yeah.
edge technology. It's the
Mm.
drones that could be suspended in the air indefinitely. They don't use any
Mm.
fuel. They're what's called self-charging drones. So once
Mm.
they're airborne, they can stay in the air for up to 90 days. They can monitor the area. They can do all kinds of surveillance to provide for in the case of Armenia, for the safety of the citizens of Armenia. So, how difficult is it for me to
Yeah.
be able to be,
Mm.
to get to know certain people, the connections that to
Yes.
be
Yeah.
to be allowed to have this kind of impact and activity, positive economic activity in Armenia? Is it going to be very, very difficult? I should probably almost like forget about it, or it's possible to do with your help, of course, your introduction.
Uh, yes. Well, I hope it shouldn't be very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, as an Armenian, I'm very grateful to you for entertaining, these plans.
Sure.
Um, I think that as far as the drone technology is concerned, I would probably start, frankly speaking, with the meeting with a union. It's called the Union of um, Advanced Technology Enterprises.
Okay.
It is like a professional union, really, of IT companies in Armenia. Uh, it is one of the rare unions that I think is actually working well, and I think their voice is clearly heard by the government.
Yes.
Uh, I think probably, they are more flexible compared to a government official. Although certainly you should probably also schedule visits with the Minister of High. We have a Minister of High Tech Technology, High Tech Industry.
Okay.
So those are two obvious candidates, I think, for you to meet as soon as possible. The first is the Union of IT Enterprises, and the second is the Ministry of High Tech Industry, because they, I believe, they will be able to introduce you to say, the Minister of Defense, or whoever will be the ultimate beneficiary, of the technology, because dealing with the military directly I believe it's a little bit more difficult. I think it's better to have them as intermediary.
Sure, sure, sure.
As far as the environmental project is concerned, I think that uh, uh, well, again, I think probably it's worth considering meeting both someone from the civil society sector. At this time, I probably could not recall which NGO is specifically working on the problems related to Lake Sevan. But we can probably find out that. And in terms of the government officials, it's I believe it's the Ministry of uh, it's called, I believe, territorial government that has this environmental agency under it. Well, the issue of Lake Sevan, it is widely discussed in Armenia every year, every summer, I would say, because it's normally during summer that people notice, that the water is, say, turning green, and I'm pretty sure that the government, it's not that it ignores the issue. I think it simply doesn't have the ability of either truly understanding where the problem lies, because at some point they say that it's to the level, if we increase the level, the problem will be solved, but then they offer some alternative explanations of why this may happen. So I'm not 100% certain that they are sure about the causes of the problem, and but I'm pretty sure that they have researched this extensively. So before, you know starting something, it's obviously necessary to understand what the government has done so far, and whether what you have in mind will really help, because it's just my, assumption. I'm not a specialist in this area, but I think that if the problem could be solved, by simply, well, not simply, but by building a plant, I assume that probably they would have come up with that suggestion, but I never heard about the plant as a possible solution to the problem, frankly speaking. Well, I'm sure that Dr. Kazaran that you spoke to is better informed about the subject. But yes, I think we should certainly hear from somebody from the government as well, before you start developing the plan for this plant. So if you plan to come in spring, yes, I think maybe about maybe 1 month or so in advance of your visit, we could reach out, to these agencies to try to schedule the meetings. I do not think that our introduction would be that's valuable. Maybe, what we can do is that we can try to find the contact information for the people that it's probably worth reaching out to, and then you can contact them directly. If they are unresponsive, then only we will intervene and see, make sure that they received your email. So
Sure,
uh,
sure. And
I,
there's this, I guess, what I was going to interject real quickly. You know, for us, it's just very important to be represented properly in Armenia. So, what does Alphabet Investments do? Well, we'll have you or your firm kind of speaking on our behalf. Saying
Mhm.
we bring high technology to Armenia. Number one, number two, we would love to take care of all kinds of environmental issues, not just Lake Savan, but many others. Whatever needs to be done, because we believe that we only have one planet, and
Right.
Armenians or Americans, we're all one human race on this planet, and we need to leave the natural resources to our children and grandchildren in the best way possible, so that they don't have to worry about what to drink. It's catastrophic what's going on right now in the world. I mean, it's just absolutely. It's really different, alarming times we live in, turbulent times that we live in, and so environmental issues, the high tech, anything that we could even, we could bring the technology, the know-how. We can build a factory somewhere outside of Yerevan, or perhaps maybe some other parts of Armenia, and then we would let the local team, so it doesn't have to become like an American entity.
Right.
We could just allow a local team continue on and just sort of build the drones or manage that water treatment plant. And so maybe we could just form an Armenian entity without even referencing anything made in the US or American. It would probably make more sense, wouldn't you say? So we just bring in the know-how, the funding, the sort of the energy, if you will, and then let the local team take it from there and kind of manage it locally, so that if anybody asks, well, it's just a bunch of local Armenian entrepreneurs that had a great idea and they implemented it with maybe some help from their friends from America. But that would be probably a little bit, I think, a little bit easier, and that way nobody will say, well, what is this sort of? I understand. I've been watching your news lately about all the turmoil that's going on. The channel I'm watching is with Eric Hakopian, because he speaks fluent English. He's part of that CivilNet YouTube channel, and so he covers everything really, really well, I think. And so everything I know about Armenia is from that channel, everything. So because he's my only source. And that guy from London, what's his name? Emilio, I think his name. Is a great guy
Yeah, I'm
too.
not familiar with them.
Yes. Oh, you've met them, or did you just?
No, I'm following Eric Hakopian also.
Oh,
Yes,
you
I
also
think so.
follow me. Okay.
Yeah, on CivilNet. Yeah.
Yes. So I would say, given the situation that I understand, it's a very, very sensitive issue. How perhaps maybe some local Armenians are saying, well, what is this, inflow of these Americans, of these French people, of these
Well, yeah,
foreigners coming
frankly
in?
speaking, I wouldn't be very much concerned about that. This maybe that would be like something to worry about maybe in Russia, but certainly not in Armenia. In
Okay.
Armenia, the attitude towards the United States has always been very positive, and I think that we certainly do not need to hide anything, but in any case, if you plan to have some sort of like permanent operations in Armenia,
Yeah.
like even from the tax or compliance perspective, it's certainly necessary to set up some form of entity. It might
Sure.
be a, a local subsidiary of a foreign parent firm, or a branch office, or a local entity that is owned by individuals.
Sure.
Any corporate form
Sure.
can work. Yes.
Sure. Like an LLC, a simple form of LLC, and then maybe perhaps another LLC that will handle, the environmental issue. The other LLC will handle the IT, production, and then another LLC will handle something else, right? So they're all separate.
Yes, from more pragmatic perspective, also, I think it might be better to keep them separate, because the government, for example, has certain tax benefits and other forms of support, let's say, for IT companies. But in order to take advantage of those, you need to be focused exclusively on IT.
And also, Nessus, I wanted to ask you something that's very also no less important than just us bringing in the technology and funding with us. What if we partnered up with, let's say, for certain projects. Let's say maybe that environmental project that we could tackle at Lake Savan, 50% of funding and 50% will come from, let's say, a local partner or a local funding entity, let's say EBRD, right, the European Bank of Reconstruction. So I understand they have all kinds of grants or loans for these various types of environmental projects, and so, you know, if they put up $50 million, we put up $50 million, and we would have a significant presence that could tackle multiple issues, not just Lake Savan, but other issues, whatever's pressing, most pressing issues in Armenia, and we could do a lot of good. So, do you think that's even possible? Or you think it will be very, very problematic to get them involved and commit any money from the European Bank of Reconstruction in London?
Uh, I think that if we are talking about such large amounts, it's probably worth certainly meeting with the National Interest Fund, which is a government um, uh, a government operated fund. Basically, the idea of which is to have this kind of joint ventures, with foreign investors, where typically they invest 50% of the required amount, and everything that is related to infrastructure and IT technologies, it certainly would be of interest to them. And yes, I think that it's worth approaching them, and maybe uh, they will also involve EBRD or other international organizations. I think maybe involving them may be valuable, frankly speaking. Yes, because they were like specifically created for uh, financing such projects.
Yeah. Is there a lot? Can I ask you something that we're just getting to know each other, but
Mm,
can I just jump ahead of myself and maybe ask you a very sensitive question that just
please,
for me to, if you could help me understand. Uh,
sure.
since 2018, with the new prime minister in power, Prime Minister Pashinyan, there's a lot of, I guess, or so they say, from CivilNet that I've been
Mm,
watching, a lot of positive news, a lot of
right.
positive change that's happening in Armenia. So prior to that, it was very old ways of doing business, and if a company gets established in Armenia, that company might be asked to pay some protection money or even taken over by one of the local business people. Is that a thing of the past? We would not be risking sort of. There's no risk of our staff members or being extorted for money, or our company being taken over by some oligarch in Armenia and saying, okay, now you used to, thank you for getting this business off the ground, I'll take it from here, and then we'll be removed from that
No, I
equation.
I I think those are, frankly speaking, even before the revolution, those such scenarios didn't exist. Those were just some rumors that were created by I don't know whom. Maybe like in 1990s that might be a thing,
Mm.
but not afterwards.
Okay.
Even under the old regime, nothing like that happened. I think what could have happened under the old regime is when the entrepreneurs themselves they sought the protection of certain government officials and they offered them maybe bribes, or otherwise corrupted. But the initiative always came from the entrepreneurs themselves. The government would never do this on its own initiative, or any government officials. And now it's no, you should certainly not worry about that.
Okay. Okay. I mean, that's just one of the kind of concerns that I had, and so
Mm,
and I really think it's almost like both the environmental projects and the high tech projects are absolutely would definitely benefit people of Armenia greatly. So almost like if you
Mm.
ask me, Sam, which project would you like to start first, I would say it's hard to tell. I mean, they're both very, very, useful and beneficial.
Right.
Would be beneficial. So, um, are there any other projects other than what I just mentioned, Lake Savan and the high tech, smart drones that could be
Mhm.
of interest in Armenia? I mean, can you just name a few that maybe came across your desk that were very promising? Just to give me an idea what's highly valued.
I think that if I will share with you the link to this to the website of this fund, so Armenian National Interest Fund,
Hmm.
because there they also like have a list of areas, sectors in which they are willing to contribute, and I think it reflects mm, the government's policy, of what they consider to be of vital importance
Hmm.
to the country. So I believe if you check that website, it will give you a better idea about the government's priorities. And the government's priorities, I think, generally they probably well, reflect the real situation. So they are in a better position to assess, what is
Sure,
needed.
sure,
Yeah.
of course. Of course, and then how is the just the overall? I understand that with the inflow of all the Russian citizens, is it really like 150,000 Russians are walking the streets in Yerevan? I mean, give or take a few thousand, but is it really 150,000 people migrated to Armenia or specifically to Yerevan? I mean, is that accurate? I mean, more or less, do
Well,
you
you,
see
you
it?
you may get that feeling because yeah, if you walk in the streets, you will see many Russians. But I believe, according to official numbers, it's closer to 40,000.
Okay.
So a lot of them, I believe, around. Eight hundred thousand Russians came, but then practically all of them left, because they mostly consider Armenia as like a temporary place to stay before they either return to Russia or move to a third country. So I think it's likely that maybe up to 50,000 people will ultimately stay here.
So it's a little bit more not as simple of a task to find a rental, an apartment, let's say, to rent downtown Yerevan, or it's
Well,
somewhat.
yes, the since this crisis started in the spring, I think that the rental prices they probably doubled,
Hmm.
but mm, now I believe there is a tendency. Maybe the winter is approaching, and many people they do not want to spend the winter in Armenia because winter is not the
Yeah,
is
sure.
not the best time here. So if you book something, I think in January or February, I believe you should be able to find something at not very uh, high prices.
Okay, okay. And is it possible, do you think, to get see all of us at our office? We all this is the main reason why we chose Armenia is we're all Christians and we want to, as Christians, we want to support another Christian nation, and so Armenia is the first nation who adopted Christianity. So it's a very, very, very symbolic gesture for all of us. So is it possible? Is this just a silly question for you? Maybe I don't know, but to me, it's a symbolic kind of a is it possible, do you think, to get an apartment where maybe where the windows would overlook Mount Ararat, or is it very hard to sort of, it's next to impossible to see it from like an apartment building where you get up in the morning, you drink your tea, and then you look outside and there's Mount Ararat in the distance.
Well, it's certainly possible. I mean, a lot of buildings have or houses have such a view. I normally like if you check the announcements. We have this one large database. It's called List AM. It's maybe like similar to uh, Craigslist in the United States. So basically, people put the advert, either the owners or most likely like brokers and agents.
Mm.
If it has a view on Mount Ararat, they would probably mention it. So if you search Ararat, those announcements should come up. So it's very common, but I would say maybe it's a little bit difficult mm, to find a combination where the apartment is in decent shape because um, say many such buildings, I assume they would be a little bit outside of the center. So
Mm.
if you want something closer to the center but that has the view, it may be a little bit more difficult to find. Maybe you should will be looking at the top floors of the more
Sure, sure.
high
Just
rise buildings.
anything that would get me that view, that would be really, truly quite a fulfillment for me. Not only just being in Armenia,
Mm.
doing the projects, but also in the morning, my early morning meditation. If I, to see the
Right, right,
biblical Mount Ararat as something very, it would be very, very special, to have that kind
right,
of a
right, right.
view. So, and I'm not putting in the same category like in America. We like to see the view of the ocean. This is more of a biblical, much kind of a deeper meaning than just a nice view. This is
Mm.
it's just, it's hard to believe that Noah's Ark is still there, right? I mean, it's just, I mean, many people. Is that a big deal for a lot of locals in Yerevan, or you're used to the mountain, you're used to the view? It's not a it's not a big sort of a symbolic thing. Your heart doesn't stop halfway when you look at Mount Ararat, right? It's an everyday kind of a thing
Well,
for you.
I think that the view is really beautiful, and the thing is that it's still the distance between Yerevan and Ararat is quite considerable. So
Hmm.
I think on most of the days the air is not very clear. So like for example, right now probably I wouldn't be able to see it at all.
Hmm.
But when the air is clear, the view is really quite impressive. So I think even for us, for the locals, we might stop and just enjoy the view for
Sure.
for a few moments. But such days are um, quite rare. I would say that spring probably is a good time for that. In summer, it's already a little bit foggy, but in April, May, you might get some very
Clear
good
days
views.
to see
Mm.
to look at the mountain. Yeah. So, and Narcissus, let me ask you this now. As far as the I'm going off of the words of Eric Hakopian from CivilNet, so I'm just going to ask you because you're a real person I'm talking to, not just a
Mhm.
television screen. So I understand things from what he says. Are pretty tense or pretty. People are quite. Um, People are quite nervous about the situation between Armenia and Azerbaijan, right? The sort of it's not a finite, it's not a completed sort of a, there was nothing signed, right? So in other words, this conflict may escalate again, or is it it's a finalized kind of a conflict? Is there any finality there, or is it just it could spark again into another,
Mm.
God forbid, war that happened 2 years ago?
I think it's certainly not finalized. So, of course, when the 2020 war ended, we kind of hoped that the peace treaty would be signed quickly, and that would settle it, but it never happened. And
Mm.
I think that the locals, I think, are already a little bit used to this, and we do not really hope that the conflict will be resolved permanently. And I mean, the whole history of Armenian and Turkish people, because well, Azeris, we consider them as well an extension of Turkey, which they really are, and well, it hasn't been easy for us for the last 1,000 years. So it would be a little bit naive to think that, things will permanently settle and
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
So
So what do you think, in your opinion, might make it happen, or might sort of facilitate this process of stabilizing the situation in, uh, at least on the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan? Is there anything that
well,
could
I think
solidify?
that there is probably a consensus, even among all the politicians, and that the only thing, is that the Armenian military will be strong enough, to um, uh, to 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 change, this position of Azerbaijan, because
Hmm.
right now, they have the stronger hand, and they obviously think that they should take advantage of the fact that there is a uh, lack of balance in military power between the two countries. Once this balance is more or less restored, I think the prospects for peace will be much higher.
Yeah, this is partially, Narcissus, why you know, we're interested in Armenia, is to bring every bit of technology, or every bit of sort of brotherly Christian kind of a support that we can through technology, of course.
Mhm.
So this smart drone, I believe, might be absolutely what Armenia needs right now. So it's like I said, it was meant to secure the border when the wall wasn't built. You
Mhm.
probably may remember that Trump wanted to build
Right.
a wall that's 1,000 miles long, and so that got canceled. They began to build the wall, and they realized it will take 100 years to build it. So the drone was meant to be the solution. Our drone that was financed over 20 years ago. So this drone was worked on for 20 years. 20 years, long years, the best minds in America. So it speaks English, it speaks Spanish. So it's fully, uh, it's designed to keep the Mexicans from crossing
Mhm.
into the U.S. territory. So it will, and by the way, it can see everything in total darkness. It can see everything in the dark,
Mhm.
um, and it's designed to hover without any flashing lights, and then when it sees everything like in broad daylight, so it will detect people crossing. It will silently, by the way, there's no noise, there's no propellers. It will hover above them, turn on the bright lights, and in Spanish tell them to turn around and leave the territory of the U.S. in perfect Spanish. And now, if they
Mhm.
ask a question, the drone is able to communicate back. So it's so smart it can actually carry on a conversation, like a human conversation.
Mhm.
It has
I see.
35,000 words programmed and idiomatic expressions programmed by our, the programmers. So so it was meant to deter people, and yet it was armed with a very special, I think it's an 18-inch parabolic antenna that has a certain, it's like a frequency generator. So if they don't listen, they might say, "What the hell is this?" Right? Well, I mean, it's just a drone. Let's just go.
Mhm.
So if they don't listen and they continue on, so instead
Mhm.
of now using non-lethal force, this is most important, non-lethal force. Nobody
Mhm.
will be harmed. What it does, it pulls out the antenna, points at them, and they all automatically unable to proceed. They will sit down on the tush, and they will sit there until Border Patrol will come and put them in handcuffs. So in other words, it paralyzes it affects the central nervous system
Wow.
in a very, very humane way because of the certain
Mhm.
frequency, microwave frequency, and they're unable to do anything. They're unable to run. They're unable to do any harm. They're unable to harm the police officers or the coast
Right.
guards. And the range is about 300 feet, so about 100 meters. So in other words, the drone can affect them by being 300 feet up in the air, or a little over 100 meters. So now imagine if that could be retrofitted, that function
Mhm.
could be retrofitted to have a non-lethal
Mhm.
containment of the Armenian,
Mhm.
uh, Coast Guard, or Armenian Border Patrol agents with the people from Azerbaijan. So if there's any
Yeah.
conflict, it could be resolved in a very no bullets are fired. Everything is
Right.
high tech, and
Mm-hmm.
nobody could
Yeah, that
cross
sounds
the
very nice.
border, and it will be detained. I mean, it's really
Mm-hmm.
really something. The concept is, and also this technology was worked on for the last 20 years. So it's not it's work in progress still. So, but anyway, it was canceled when Biden took office. Unfortunately, he canceled a whole bunch of other projects, and we are. Uh, we just need to find a new home for our drones, for our smart drones.
Yeah,
So,
I see.
what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that could be very useful in Armenia, or is it going to be hard to sort of integrate it in the?
Well, it sounds very interesting, but again, I think that the first thing we should do, we should talk to the people from the high-tech ministry because they are in charge of all these uh, military purchases, really, and purchases of new technologies, etc. So I think that they should certainly know better what they need, and whether this will be something that would interest them. To me it sounds very interesting, but of course, they would know better. And Sam, I apologize. I would probably have to leave, and
Oh, sure, sure.
I know that the meeting was delayed because of me. So again, please accept my apologies. I will
Did you get my
uh,
text message, by the way? I sent you a text message to your phone. Did you get it?
to my phone.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I'm
sent a
afraid I
text message.
didn't.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
see it, yeah,
So
I just texted you, so you were probably busy, but yeah, it's the one that ends with I think 6607 or something like that.
okay.
The let me just tell you the number. Tell me if that's your number, or maybe I send it somewhere else. It's the 011-374-167. Is that your mobile?
It's my colleagues. Yeah, it's my
Oh,
colleagues.
so it went somewhere else. Okay, I got you. I texted somebody else, I guess. So, okay. Well, I mean, I'm so
Yeah.
glad we talked today, Nurses. This is, and
Uh,
how do I pronounce your name, first name correctly?
you pronounce it very correctly. Yeah. So
Nurses?
it's yes.
Nurses, okay. So, let's have another meeting maybe
Sure.
whenever we find time.
Yes.
And if you have anybody else that could join our
Hmm.
meeting, by all means,
Yes.
yeah, it would be no problem. But if you'd rather just have a one-on-one meeting so we could talk some more, my hope is that you could not only handle our paperwork in Armenia for all of our businesses, but also make some useful introductions. So
Sure. Sure.
so all of us could become integrated into the Armenian society when we get there. Because
Yes.
again,
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
goal is to support our Christian brothers and
Hmm.
sisters with everything we can, and the only thing we have in our possession is funding and technology. So we would like to bring it to
Yes.
Armenia and share it freely. And then that one thing I mentioned about the 50-50 project would be quite useful, I would say, that if EBRD decides to get involved, it
Hmm.
would
Hmm.
be very appropriate, I think, from different perspectives, from different angles. So we invest half, they invest half. That would be
Right.
a thing. Is that being done, by the way, currently, or is it a new concept? Is EBRD investing in Armenia, or they're just talking about it?
No, they certainly invest. Normally, they do this through commercial banks, though. So, if they want to target a specific area, they would finance the banks, and they in turn will provide the loans, yeah, etc. Yeah, and I must again, I must apologize, but I really need to
Sure,
attend to a personal
sure.
matter. So
Okay,
I will certainly follow up with an email. If I
sure.
find some valuable context, I will share them with you, and maybe we can continue together with them, or yeah, you can schedule maybe calls with them as well.
Sure.
I appreciate a lot, what your plans and your willingness to help the country. We will stay in touch.
Absolutely, and I truly hope and as we say here, we hope and pray that there won't be any more escalation between
Thank
Armenia
you.
and Azerbaijan, so that things will stay peaceful and at least as they are, not more difficult, but at least the way they are now.
Yes.
I know it's already difficult for you guys, but it's just it's better to not have any kind of activity than God forbid some more problems. So as we say here, we'll keep you in our prayers, and anything that we
Thank
can
you.
do, we'll that's the purpose of our of this opening up this dialogue, to bring the technology and everything we have to Armenia. So yeah, if you will keep that in mind, and
Yes.
we'll keep in touch, and maybe in a week or so we'll get on another
Yes.
Zoom call.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
How is the
Have a
connection
good-
quality? Is audio is good, video
It's
good,
very
or is
good.
it?
It's very
is
good.
it-
Yeah,
yeah.
I can
Same
hear
here.
you.
I can hear you clearly. It's phenomenal. It's finally we have decent technology that we can communicate remotely.
It's good.
So,
Well, okay. Thank you. Have a good night. We
Yep.
will be in touch. Yeah.
okay. All right.
Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye bye.